Hello, everybody. It's George from Ireland. Welcome back to the channel. I'm reflecting more on the recent attacks by the United States on the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's not quite the sea change that some people claim it signifies, because cast your minds back to early in Donald J. Trump's first presidential term when he launched unprovoked attacks against Iranian positions in Iraq. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps was there, had a very cordial relationship with the Shia-dominated government of Iraq. One of the positive outcomes of the Iraq liberation in 2003 is that there's democracy and, surprise, surprise, majority rules. Another thing I noticed incidentally is their GDP has increased 11-fold. We hear all this doom and gloom about the Iraq war, and yes, a lot of people were killed. That's what a war is. But people unwilling to face up to the positive consequences thereof. Anyway, besides all that, so these attacks on Iran made token efforts to retaliate, and that was it. Probably part of Trump's calculations is that this will play out again, and so far that proved to be correct. Remember, the Iranians even informed the Qataris that we're going to launch airstrikes, well, sort of fire missiles and the drones and so on at that US base in Qatar, and obviously the Americans were informed to get everyone out of the way because the Iranian government felt they had to be seen to do something. But if no Americans were killed, they think maybe at that point the White House might just let sleeping dogs lie. And where it is a change, obviously, Trump was being a peace president. What of these airstrikes don't work? Are you going to fight on the ground? And he really wants to avoid another ground war, such an entanglement. You'd be dragged into a quagmire. Anyway, where it's a break with previous US foreign policy is the lack of consultation with even his closest allies. Presumably, the Israelis were telling him what to do, and no doubt Netanyahu bent his ear and lauded him and said that your name will be blessed for 100 generations. You'll be a hero if you do this. You'll go down in history as the one who ended the Iranian nuclear program. And remember how the US has rode back on his original boasts. As usual, Trump overpromising, under-delivering, saying that they totally and completely obliterated the Iranian nuclear program. So there's a tautology in there, so something's a bit wrong. And then it emerges that they don't think that's the case, actually. At least some enriched uranium was removed. And now this could go either way, that they could be running up the white flag, or indeed the more hawkish elements in the Iranian regime will say, well, we're just going to have to go all out for a nuclear bomb, a dirty bomb even, and that's the only way to be safe, to say, if you drop a bomb on us, that is it. Tel Aviv, for example, is going to be under the shadow of a mushroom cloud. But, cast your mind back to the George W. Bush era when he was eager to gather a coalition of the willing. He got a crucial United Nations Security Council resolution in November 2002 about Iraq, that if they didn't verifiably show they had no weapons of mass destruction programs, no nuclear, no chemical, no biological, then the war would commence. It was, the onus was upon Saddam Hussein's regime to do so. And if he didn't prove that, it had to be said that he had it, because he had all this stuff. We know this in 1991 from their inventory, and various governments that sold him some of the elements that were used for these weapons of mass destruction programs. But, Donald J. Trump made no attempt to get a United Nations Security Council resolution. I mean, I doubt he knows what it is. Remember, a UN Security Council resolution is international law. Now, it's partly there's no way he was going to get one. You only need one of the permanent five to veto. Russia would veto, China would veto, France and the United Kingdom, not clear. They might abstain. I doubt they'd veto. And obviously, then there's the other 20 non-permanent members, the other 10 non-permanent members, which where they're going to go, because you have to have no vetoes from the permanent five. You don't have to have positive votes. They can abstain, and at least a majority of the remaining 10. So these things are very, very difficult to get. It takes a long time. The language is watered down. That would take weeks. I mean, it wouldn't happen, but if they did happen, it would take weeks. And so the Iranians be able to move and hide all their material for their nuclear program. And it's a civilian nuclear program. We know that. Is it a military one as well? Maybe. I don't know. Unsurprisingly, I'm not privy to their nuclear secrets, and so on. So they hit these Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz. They say killing dozens of Iranian civilians into the bargain. And if he couldn't get a UN Security Council, could he at least get other countries on board, a coalition of the willing? He made no attempt to do so. The United States, together with the Blair administration in the UK, they got that resolution of 1441 in 2002, maintaining a second resolution whilst desirable. was not legally necessary, and so on. Um, but anyway, so he probably regards the UN as a namby-pamby organization. He's very frank about his disdain for international law, and all sorts of international organizations. It's really just an audience to hear him mouthing off. And obviously, his close ally, Benjamin Netanyahu, also is openly contemptuous of international law. He's in breach of it so much. He's wanted by, for arrest to stand trial by the International Criminal Court and so on. And the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights has pointed out that really it's an indisputable fact that he is perpetrating genocide against the Palestinian people, and so forth. So everything will be self-defense. The mass murder of civilians is self-defense, and so on. And obviously Netanyahu is riding high because so far it's worked for him. I mean, Hezbollah has been decapitated, hardly active. Other Arab states are staying out of it. He's been able to steal more Syrian territory. The strikes against Iran have been fairly successful at very little cost to the Israelis. And the Iranians want to calm this down. They have to be seen to do something, but not too provocative. And if the best thing for them is let sleeping dogs lie, husband their resources to maybe hit back much later, or at least repress the population's attempted uprising. They don't want to be dragged into a longer war. They don't want sanctions to be tightened even more. They're not going for broke with shutting the Straits of Hormuz. That would have a devastating effect on their economy, already battered. They wouldn't be able to export their oil and gas. They don't want to displease their key customer, which is China. And there's a distinct lack of allies. Okay, Russia making sympathetic noises, harumphing, sounding gratingly morally superior. This high tone against what the US has done. And I mean, I actually agree with them on this one, but it doesn't come well when they're the ones uttering this denunciation. But there's no practical help from Russia or any other country which has got with which Iran's got a cordial relationship, like North Korea. So those bunker buster bombs, they've obviously done a lot of damage. So is the Tomahawk missiles, and so on. But and His Majesty's government didn't take a clear position on this. I mean, some other countries did. Not that Trump is listening. So the United States is willing to go it alone. I mean, okay, they're helping out Israel, and they really don't care what any other countries think. Now, it's said by MI5 that Iran is plotting against the United Kingdom a lot. I suppose partly because the United Kingdom is plotting against them. I wonder whether they're doing to other Western democracies which are post-Christian, like Sweden or Spain or something like that. So the thing obviously is to stay out and not aggress Iran. Then Iran won't aggress the United Kingdom, and so forth. So yeah, Trump has fought shy. I know he's even talking about ground invasion. I think that would be unpardonable folly. So he ought to ponder just how badly that could go were it to go ahead. And I think even the most bellicose elements in the United States and the state of Israel are not advocating for that. So it obviously plays well for Russia. Is very best a diversion of attention from the Ukraine war, and then in some quarters seen to show how the United States is the villain of the peace, and so on. And it also underscores how Trump has made it worse. More unilateralism, pulling out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which was keeping Iran's enriched uranium to a minimum, which proved that was the case, which Donald Trump himself twice certified that it was, subject to these stringent inspections. Why does Iran have to have them, despite being signing up to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? And Israel doesn't, when it's refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and so forth. Iran is not illegally occupying the land of any other country, whereas Israel is illegally occupying the land of Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Now, some people say Palestine is not a sovereign state. I mean, it is. It's recognized by about 140 countries, only slightly fewer than Israel. And there was a time when Israel was recognized by far fewer than 140. But even if you don't count Palestine, it's still occupying the land of two of its neighbors illegally, in breach of United Nations resolutions. I know that they're UN General Assembly resolutions, not Security Council resolutions, but Israel's been willing to carry on illegal wars against UN Security Council resolutions. It's relied so heavily on that US veto, but when it doesn't get it, suddenly that doesn't matter. So you see their double standards, and their complete dishonesty. All these Israeli spokeswomen, adept in polishing a turd, in claiming that the mass murder of civilians, 57 civilians shot dead when they're queuing for food. I mean, it's just sickening. How do they get away with this? If it was anybody else, and why is that not front page news? Why is not that the headline of most news bulletins all around the world? If it happened in any other country, if China had done it to Vietnamese people, if Canada had done it to Paraguayans, if Italians had done it to Cambodians or something like that, no, we wouldn't stand for it. But somehow this is self-defense, and we mustn't speak up as anti-Semitism. I definitely despise anti-Semitism. No one should be mistreated for his race, religion, nationality, citizenship, birthplace, and so forth. So anyone speaking up for Palestinian human rights is somehow an anti-Semite. But you know, all this dehumanization, all the mass murder of Palestinians, somehow that's not anti-Palestinian racism. That's not rooted in anti-Arab prejudice. That's not Islamophobia. Of course it is. Anyway, peace now is very, very sad. Let's have a right of return for Palestinians to Israel, for Israelis to Arab countries that drove them out after 1948 and anywhere else. Okay, goodness, I know easier said than done. Peace now.